Well, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Orono Intermediate School District Board meeting for Monday, February 27th, 2023. Ms. Howell, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We've got guests and visitors tonight. This is great. All right, so the first thing we have tonight is to consider our agenda. Everyone has the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes that we need to make to the agenda before we start? All right, do I have a motion that we approve the agenda as printed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. All right, the first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and it contains routine matters that typically do not require board discussion. Individual board members may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion or separate action. So our consent agenda items tonight are as follows. Approving the minutes from the regular board meeting held on February 13th, 2023, approving personnel recommendations, accepting donations totaling $41,896.61, approve the payment agreement and release agreements, approve the treasurer's report for January 2023, approve the electronic fund transfers for January 2023, and approve bill vouchers, the EP register, EFT vouchers, and the Capital One report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any concerns or questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is our superintendent's report on excellence. Dr. Flesher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yet again, we have a lot to celebrate in the district. Since we've last met, we have added a number of student achievements in academics, athletics, and activities. First, congratulations to the Orono dance team for winning the state competition for the first time in Orono school history. The high kick team competed at state as well, earning a third place medal for the first time ever. And we, in fact, just honored our entire jazz team, kick team, and retiring coach Sharon Ford at our recognition event tonight. An outstanding season. Congratulations also to Orono girls hockey, who won the section championship, securing a state appearance. The girls excelled in the quarter and semifinals to make their first appearance in the state championship final, and they played their hearts out against War Road. We're so very proud of our players, coaches, families, and the many friends who supported our team. Congratulations also to May Grandy, Zoe Lopez, and Celia Dahl, who were honored and named to the all-tournament team. Special thanks to coaches Larry Olam, Mackenzie Scatter, Claire Bierke, and Hannah Williams for a truly special season. Also in athletics over the weekend, on Saturday, our boys swim and dive team finished second at sections and will compete as one of the top teams at the state meet this week at the University of Minnesota. The boys will be swimming in 3 different relays and 5 different individual events, with 2 divers also qualifying for state. Go Spartans. Orono boys hockey also beat Hutchinson in 56 seconds into overtime to give us a 2-1 win. The boys will play Minneapolis tomorrow for the section final game. Good luck to all of our athletes. And also in athletics, Orono boys basketball defeated number 1 ranked Benilde St. Margaret 77-69 on Friday night. Our last 2 conference games are this week against St. Louis Park and Chaska. Please come out and cheer on our boys. In academics, our mathematicians have great news to share tonight. Orono High School administered the American Mathematics Competition this fall. Based on outstanding performance, senior Michael Rasher qualified to the American Invitational Mathematics Competition. Congratulations to Michael. Orono math team qualified also for its 3rd consecutive state tournament. Led by a strong senior class of Michael Rasher, Zara Coakley, Sam Ertmer, and Colin Parker, the team finished 2nd out of 55 teams in Class AA and 13th out of 160 teams overall. Congratulations to our mathematicians. This month is also Black History Month. Our buildings have been honoring Black History Month since the beginning of February. These are just a few of the highlights. Our third graders completed study packets celebrating the achievements of 9 Black Americans throughout history. Middle school and high schoolers have learned about the achievement of Black artists and playwrights. In programming, our students for grades 6 through 12, Mr. Montgomery's high school American history class created displays in the Orono High School entryway to share history of influential African Americans. Each story contains a QR code that takes students to a student-created website with more information. And special shout out to our Orono High School Student Voice Club for their outstanding efforts this year. Each day in February, a club member is sharing the achievements of one individual during morning announcements. They also brought in some really delicious sweet potato comfort pie and homemade samples to all high school students and staff. Student Voice will be delivering tomorrow morning a culminating Black History Month presentation during Spartan Hour. Orono also performed really well in the Metro Alliance Division. Oh, sorry, I mixed my pages, back to math. Taking first place of 6 teams. And we had 6 students who finished in the top 10 individual. 6 of the top 10 were Orono students. And Michael Rasher also qualified for the state tournament as an individual for the 3rd straight season. He turned in his best season as the highest point scorer in Class AA and 13th highest overall in the entire state. The state tournament will be held on March 13th at South St. Paul High School. And finally, our speech team. Since our last board meeting, the Orono speech team has completed in 2 tournaments with outstanding results. At the Chaska tournament, we had top 3 honorees. Madeline Dorr was first place in humor. Sophie Middleton, first place in prose. Axel Duke, second place in drama. And Barrett Buck, 3rd place in prose. At the Quinlan Legacy tournament, 11 students in Orono placed in the top 5. And the following 4 students earned top 3 placements. Emily Middleton, first place in creative expression. Madeline Dorr, second place in humorous interpretation. Maya Haugen, second place in storytelling. And Adeline Stavitsky, 3rd place in poetry. Special thanks again to head speech coach Barb Schaffner for leading this great team. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Flesher. That's a lot of excellence. That's a lot of excellence. That is just really great news. All right, the next item on our agenda is committee reports and board members' questions and comments. So what I'd like to do is ask the Finance and Facilities Committee, Ms. Borchers and Mr. Madsen, to kind of report on the committee meeting last week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You neglected to mention yourself as well.
I was there
So
too.
feel free to hop in. If I forget anything, I'll get us started. We had our Finance and Facilities meeting, and it was focused on 2 separate areas. The first, we met with 4 folks from Wold Architects, and then a person named Shelby from Ellers. And we were all there either online or in person, and we talked about some upcoming maintenance things that we really need to take care of that are part of our 10-year rolling long-term facilities maintenance plan. And we're trying to be very judicious in figuring out when we need to replace certain things. For example, at the middle school, we talked a lot about that. I know many of us who've been around a long time think of that as the new school, but it is in fact turning 24 soon. And so for those of us who have houses at least that old, understand that there are things you need to replace, and we need to plan for that. And if we're going to be replacing things, we want to do that in a way that we have some economies of scale with other projects that we know are on the very near-term horizon. And so we talked a lot about a couple of middle school projects that we will be talking about as a board in significant detail soon, like in March. But just to give you a heads up, this won't be a surprise to anybody on the board, because we've been talking about this from a facilities standpoint for a while, but we also got a really nice update from the board retreat in August when we met with Wold, and they were talking about the looking at our entire facilities to make sure that we're tackling what we need to tackle when we need to take care of it. And so we spoke a lot about talking about, in particular, the air conditioning, or pardon me, I'm going to say it wrong. It's not the HVAC, the air. Okay.
Indoor air quality.
Thank you,
but
indoor air
HVAC.
quality. Again, 20 plus years old, it's time. And so working on that. And then, as everybody knows, if you've tried to buy a car or a refrigerator, there are a lot of months in between when you place an order and when you get something you need. And so we need to also factor that in how we are going to be spending our money to the benefit of the kids and making sure that everything's tip-top. And then you guys are welcome to jump in now if you want to augment. Okay. And so the second part that we talked about is you'll hear in much more detail tonight about the wireless solution. And I'm sure Sean will do it in a much better job of describing why it's not a solution you can pick off of the shelf and have it work. Boom, there it is. It is a nuanced, multi-layered, complex solution, and he and his team have done a really good job of understanding what we need to do and how we need to do it best. And we'll hear more about that tonight, but we had a nice presentation from True North that helps a significant number of other districts around the state, actually around the country, and to make sure that we are approaching this judiciously with a conservative eye on finances, but giving the solution that is needed campus-wide. So hop in.
Yeah. I'll start with the long-term facility maintenance on the Orono Middle School. So the discussions, as Ms. Borchers was pointing out, is really that we know that on the horizon, we have to deal with the HVAC system, which is a sizable expense. On top of that, we're taking into careful consideration some of the other expenses that we know are in the near future. And now this is a good time to do it, or to be thinking about them, and we'll have further discussion, because as Ellers is pointing out, we have some opportunity to keep the consistency of our spend in the community so that we're not having to increase our taxes and have kind of a more of a roller coaster ride for our community. We're being very thoughtful, intentional, and strategic about how we want to go about doing those things. So some of the other considerations with our door entry and safety for the students are under review and in consideration. And then as it goes for the Wi-Fi, I would say again, I think that the proposals that we've received or that were received and the thoughtful consideration about them, you're going to see is it is not, to Sarah's point, it's not just picking the right box off of the shelf, but we have somebody that I think I absolutely trust over the last year of watching him. We got really lucky of somebody who is taking a very complex issue of trying to create a functional Wi-Fi system within our schools that not only works, but that is going to compete with all of the items that the students are bringing, and how do we prevent the things that we don't even know are going to come. I think I'm feeling really good about the direction that the school is taking us.
Just a couple, this is great. The Wi-Fi project, yay, tech levy. Because this is what we're replacing, we'll hear how many years old it is and how many generations it's behind, but this is what the tech levy is doing, is letting us comprehensively in all the buildings fix the Wi-Fi. And so thank you to our voters for approving that, because this is going to be the one of the very visible results of that tech levy. I think from the middle school construction, again, it's stuff that we've talked about, indoor air quality and the entry sequence of what we need to do. Again, the world has changed in how that building was designed 24 years ago, and this is the opportunity to do that. I was really impressed with Ellers, who's our financial advisor, and how they can structure the bond. You know, we're going to borrow some of this. Our revenue is flat, but our expenses are kind of lumpy, and so they can really structure the bond payments between principal and interest to make that work, give us the most flexibility in how to do that, and as Mr. Mattson said, keep people's taxes from going up one year and then going down and then going up, can keep it pretty consistent. So that was really good news, and we'll hear more about that. The timing of this is we'll probably do it in March, at the March meeting. Part of that is so that we get the money, because as Ms. Borchers said, we need to order some of that HVAC equipment today for the summer of 2024 to actually get it here. So that's why the timing of this is that we've got construction 15 months from now, but we need to start ordering some of the big parts now. So that's the timing, and then we'll probably see the complete proposal at our March meeting. Okay, so that's our committee report. We'll start with board comments and other board members' comments, and we'll start with Ms. Lunsgaard, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So since our last meeting, I was able to attend the Curriculum and Accountability Council meeting. Dr. Rulin shared the results of the Minnesota Student Survey and the district's mental health, character, and relationships work. Members of the committee were able to provide their perspective and offer suggestions about additional communication and presentations related to the results. So you'll be hearing from Dr. Rulin tonight. Additionally, only one other thing, on behalf of Orono Action, last weekend, Amy Elworth and I attended Representative Andrew Meyer's Constituents and Coffee, Caribou Coffee in Excelsior, to share with him the school board's legislative priorities so that he was aware of what's happening in the schools and what his constituents hope from him. He was very receptive to hearing from us. We'll be meeting with him again on March 8th in his office following AMSD's Day at the Capitol. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allie and I were able to attend the Community Education Advisory Council meeting, and we got an update from Kayla Gallup, who's at the Discovery Center, regarding our classroom engagement model. Now, this is something that is, we're getting some funding through the Department of Education. It's a 5-year program. We're currently in year 4 of 5, but when that runs out, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing that model because it's actually working really well. And it's talking about how to engage students, how to build their social relationships and their independence. And the fact that being engaged doesn't mean sitting quietly and just staring straight ahead. Sometimes kids are very well behaved, but they're not actually engaged. So they're employing something that they call stare data, where they have the time to actually observe a child for a period of time and look and see and make sure that they're engaging, and to have different ways to make sure that they can be taking all of this in through routines, through participation things, through working on friendship skills and goals. So that was really exciting to hear about the work that they're doing over there. It's very tailored to the individual students. And believe it or not, summer registration is coming up. It's going to be coming up March 14th. They have a great slate of programming coming out. They are looking for potentially any students, high school students, who might be looking for summer employment. They have some pretty flexible hours, so anybody could contact Tiffany or the Community Education Office, because that's a great summer job and the kids love working with those high school students. And they continue to network. The Minnesota Community Education Managers are having a retreat in May, and our management staff is going to be doing a presentation there. So it's a great way to share ideas and learn things from other districts. So glad that they're reaching out and taking part in that. And that concludes my report.
The only thing I had to report was finance and facilities. Thank you.
Ms. Howe.
Thank you. As Laura mentioned, I attended community education with her as well. The only thing I wanted to add was just I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Tiffany mentioned that they're going to bring back the really popular camp emoji. And so I wanted to just mention that because that was really popular. And then maybe an executive function camp, which would be really cool. So I just wanted to mention that as well. I also attended Orono Healthy Youth on February 16th, where Dr. Rulin presented on the Minnesota Student Survey. So as Ms. Lunsgaard noted, he'll be presenting tonight, so I will let him do the great job he did. We'll do that again tonight. And then finally, Negotiations Committee has met since our last board meeting, and we continue to have ongoing negotiations with our nutrition team, and that is Ms. Wallander, Ms. Lunsgaard, and myself that serve on the committee as board members. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Mattson.
Yeah, I've got a fun one with the PTO meeting. So the Fun Fest is underway. They've got 6 committee chairs and 30 volunteers that they are working. So they've got really grand ideas for Fun Fest. And I think the tickets go on sale is it Wednesday this week or is it next Wednesday? I don't know why I'm looking at you, but
She's supposed to know everything.
I'm the one reporting on it, so. They've also got Imagination Fest that will be on May 10th. That is an all-day event. I didn't know what this was. My kids aren't old enough to have gone through it. But are you familiar with Imagination? Yeah? Yeah? So it'll be in the Schumann Gym. It's K through 5, and it's an all-day event where parents and the community and the students all get to come in, but it's just an open idea of, whether they build a diorama or have a presentation or whatever they create, but it's just do, right? Whatever in your head, do. And they were raving about how much fun it was last year, and so they're really excited. And I think they were saying that they had to shift the room around last year because so many of the community came to attend that they're actually going to have to move it into a larger space this year. So I was really excited about that. Let's see, the other one that was kind of exciting is that they voted for the Amity program to fund this. So the Amity, A-M-I-T-Y, it is a program where you get an international intern to come and stay for the full year, and they support the Spanish class. And so we've had a representative from the past, I believe from Spain, and was it Brazil? Think so? And so the PTO approved to fund that this year. And so they voted on that. And so the Spanish class will have this. The idea is that it provides, you have an extra body in the classroom that can provide flexibility to the teachers and what they're able to do. They can spend more time focusing on students that are struggling, and that they can provide just a different interpretation of the language and the culture. And so it adds a fun dynamic to the environment, and it's surprisingly affordable in order to do this because of the exchange of the education that they get versus what we're receiving. So I was really just intrigued by the program, and also that they got that one approved. So that was fun. The other that I did want to mention was the AMSD. So forgive me if I'm going too deep on a couple things here, but the AMSD, as Ms. Lunsgaard pointed out, their day at the Capitol is coming up here on the 8th, but in this meeting that they just had, they talked about several of the legislative items that are being discussed. And I wanted to highlight because some of them are not funded. And so it's really just to kind of present to you guys what is potentially on the horizon and stuff to consider as the MSBA and the AMSD are going to lobby. So HF 680, this is the prep time, mandatory prep time, and right now it is 5 minutes for every 25 minutes of class, and there is a legislature in there for every 17 minutes instead of 25 minutes. And so Edina was speaking and was talking about how when they did the math at their school, that this could add up to 35 FTEs in order to cover that time. And this is a non-funded bill right now, just for consideration, right? The paid family medical, that is another one that could be split between the employer and the employee. There's no funding. So this would come out of the general fund right now. And by PELRA law, we would have to have this part of our negotiations. So another one to consider. Safe and sick leave time law. This would have to allow for 48 hours of sick time, but we probably already have this all covered. And then there were some that were funded or that have appropriations to cover the costs, were schooly hourly workers' compensation for the unemployed. I know that one was kind of a question mark before, but they do have that funded if it goes forward. And then a health insurance bill would be intended to be funded. And then there's other items in there about coursework for personal finance, ethics, climate science, et cetera. If these types of things go forward, the comment there is really that this adds to the coursework and takes away from electives. So just the big question right now, right, is we've got all these educational bills in front of the government or in front of the legislature. What's going to happen? And so I just wanted to update you on what those were. That concludes.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. And I sat in on part of that meeting too. Parts of it were very exciting about some of the funding proposals, but again, some of the mandates were a little bit scary on what they were proposing with no funding. The other thing, only other thing I wanted to report on that was really exciting, I was at the basketball game Friday night when Orono beat #1 ranked Benilde. But what was exciting about it was the Orono side of the stands were almost completely full. It was great. I mean, it was just a really good atmosphere to hear. And this was after everybody had been at Xcel Energy Center already cheering on the girls earlier in the day. So it was good to see both students and community members supporting us, that many people there. Anything else that we need to talk about for board comments? All right. Our next item on our agenda is old business, and the first item for old business is our policy review, where we need to take action on the policies that were presented to us at our last meeting. Dr. Flesher, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We present for action Policy 607, Instructional Services, Special Education, 608, Special Accommodations and Services for Students with Special Needs, Section 504. And that one, if I remember, was going to be removed. Policy 609, Religion, Policy 611, Homeschooling, and Policy 613, Graduation Requirements. There were no further suggestions to the Policy Committee at this time.
So can I have a motion that we adopt the policies as Dr. Flesher just repeated and that are printed in our agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
How about a second? Thank you. Any discussion on the policies? Any questions? Again, the thanks for the hard work on this really goes to the staff.
Absolutely.
We just kind of get to add.
We're the icing on the cake,
we're
but they make the
icing,
cake.
But they do the hard work, so we really appreciate that. All right, all in favor of the motion to approve the 5 policies and removing the 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. That motion passes. Is there any other old business that we need to consider tonight? All right, the next item on the agenda then is new business, and we have our AIPAC compliance report that we need to do. Dr. Flesher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I welcome Dr. Aaron Ruland, Executive Director of Learning and Accountability, Ms. Donna Osvig, Orono Schools Integration and Engagement Coordinator, and Ms. Anna Williams, parent and staff member, paraeducator at Orono High School, to the board table for presentation. I also just wanted to take a minute to thank Ms. Chris Morris, who's chair of the Orono and American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, and she was unable to attend this evening. We thank you, both Anna and Donna, for filling in. We appreciate all of your work very much and look forward to hearing about both this last year and future planned activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flesher, Mr. Bash, and members of the board. So as just a reminder of the statute that underlies this, school districts in the state of Minnesota with 10 or more American Indian students are required to have an American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. And that committee annually comes before the board on what's called a vote of concurrence. And that vote of concurrence is a statement that there's an agreement that the district is meeting the needs of American Indian families and students. So Chris would have served in that role tonight, but we get to tell the story. So it's an exciting place to be. And I would just personally say it's been very meaningful to be part of this, and very appreciative of the relationships and the work that's being done on behalf of these families and students. So the 2 people to my left are doing that work in phenomenal ways. So I want to kick us off in this story by just sharing a little bit about some of the work related to curriculum this year. So we have added some additional text sets in our media centers and in our classrooms, choice-based sets. And they provide an opportunity for students to learn about American Indian culture, as well as to develop cultural competence, which is part of our larger goals. So that's been a really nice addition to this school year. It was funded last year and has been implemented with the support of Beth Pearson, who's here tonight, as well as Amanda Sasunke at the secondary level. So with that, I'll turn it over to Donna and Anna.
Well, just to speak personally about this group, it's been tremendously valuable to our family. It has fostered a sense of community in Orono that we didn't know was here. And so it's been really great because it's spurred a lot of conversation and storytelling in our own family, as well as with the families of Orono. So that has been wonderful. We've also had some outings with the committee and committee members and families, which has been wonderful too. Just this weekend, we didn't attend, but some of the families went to the Science Museum in St. Paul. And earlier in the fall, some families, we went to the Hokokata Tea Cultural Center in Shakopee, which was phenomenal. And I would highly suggest visiting. It was a lot of fun and a very interactive museum, and we learned a lot. I don't know what else to say, but another thing I would just encourage everybody to follow us on Facebook. Christina's started a Facebook page. It's Orono AIPAC, and she puts on a lot of great content, and then also keeps everybody updated on what we're doing as a committee and the families. So,
Thank you. So you can see that as we become a committee and meet, we meet monthly, the families are starting to get to know each other and do activities together. Something coming up is the Minnesota Indian Education Association Conference, which is in the Mystic Lake Event Center. I attended it last year along with several people. Students are welcome as well. There are activities for students. Christine has connected with the American Indian Parent Committee Chair at Westonka and also Wayzata, and so there are some plans in the works for some upcoming events, socials, just trying to gain even more traction. And then summer opportunities coming, there's funding, there's money that the committee allocates, and so a message will be going out to our families that there are funds available for summer activities for them to participate if they want to take part in that. And then as added to our agenda each month, there is a different member of the committee that is bringing storytelling to it, which is a beautiful expression of culture and people's tribal heritage. And we heard from Dan Bellinger on the history of and creation of reservations in Minnesota with a map and a detailed history that really made it very meaningful. And with that, it spurred some information and discussion for us on how can we share this with more of our community, whether that's through classroom curriculum. So exploring some ways to move forward with those things. Yeah, I think that's what I thought.
So as I think about our work with community engagement and the relationship building that we do in the district, this is a really fine example of great work. And I think in 2 years, we've gone from ground zero to being a really highly effective committee, and that's been really fun and exciting. So again, thanks to all the members. Thank you to both of you, and
thank you.
looking forward to more to come.
Thank you very much. Dr. Flesher, now the vote of concurrence, can you explain that to us?
Yes, I'll need to rely a little bit on Dr. Ruland, but
Okay, Dr. Ruland.
my understanding is that it is not for the board, but it is for the APAC group to indicate publicly to the Department of Education whether or not the Orono schools, they believe the Orono schools, they concur or don't concur that the Orono schools is meeting the needs of our students, of our Native population. And so that was what I would say, big picture-wise. Details to Dr. Ruland.
Well said, and that process, Chris Morris, our chair, is working on that process with the committee members as we speak. So she'll be presenting that to you in a paper format and follow up to this meeting. So
Thank you. Any questions for this was really good. Thank you very much. It was good to hear.
On the progress to go from something so small to really robust. I mean, I hope that you can share that history that was shared at the last storytelling, because that would be really good to know and informative. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item of new business is to approve contract negotiations for the 2023 Orono Schools Wireless Network LAN Upgrade Project, and we'll approve the vendor. Dr. Flesher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I invite Mr. Sean Beaverson to the board table for remarks and presentation on the RFP, request for proposal process for the wireless upgrade to the entire campus. We are very excited for this project and thank our entire community for the support of the technology levy. We have upgraded the infrastructure repeatedly in small ways over the years to the degree that we could, but this project is really a replacement and the next major step. And as a reminder, much of the preparation work was completed last summer to replace, and I'm going to not do this well, but important communication cables between buildings to be ready for this project. And I thank Mr. Beaverson and our consultant, True North Consulting Group, for their assistance and excellent work in guiding the RFP process. And I turn it over to Mr. Beaverson.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I am thrilled to be here this evening to take the next steps in a much-needed upgrade for Orono Public Schools. This evening, I'm just going to share a little bit of details about how we came to this conclusion, a little bit about the RFP process, a quick mention of our partner, True North, and their expertise, a little bit about the evaluation, and then the request for approval to begin the negotiations part of this process. I wanted to say this too, and everybody says it, but it can't be said nearly enough, the gratitude to the community for approving the funding for this. It's difficult to imagine, if not impossible to imagine, how we would pull off what needs to be done without that support this past fall. So an overview of our needs right now. And so the age of our current solution has reached its end of life, and literally has reached the end of life this year. This year, we continue to seek ways to make improvements of the current environment, and in order to do that, I have purchased an additional 20 access points to replace some of the failing access points and then to put some in some areas of need. Those all had to be bought on the after-seller market because they no longer make them new. So we really have reached the end of life of this particular solution. Our current standard is Wi-Fi 5, which is actually 2 standards older than what's available now. We know that when our high school students come to us, they often are bringing cutting-edge technology with them. Our Wi-Fi is a couple generations behind that, which explains some of the issues that they experience. We have increased usage since our initial installation. So I did a little bit of math on this. And the system that we have currently in place was designed for a completely different environment. It was installed 3 to 5 years previous to the district going 1-to-1 at the elementary level and BYOD at the secondary level. So at the bottom of this, I note now on an average daily usage, we get somewhere around 3,000 different devices connecting to our wireless network. Significantly more than what was initially planned for when this network was initially installed. We know that there are gaps in coverage. Again, this is related to the initial design of this installation. So we're currently using a centralized AP deployment. AP stands for access point, which means they are around the areas of classrooms, oftentimes in the hallways. They seek to cover a few different spaces. Again, great for the time that it was installed, but now with the changes in technology, no longer sufficient, and so we're seeking to move to a distributed AP model, which would put an access point in essentially every learning space. So all of the classrooms would get an access point, basically doubling what currently is installed for access points now. So those are the needs that we have in order to address. To help us address those needs, because of the complexity of this project, I reached out and worked with a few different vendors to try to find who would be a good partner for this. And True North Consulting
came forward as a reliable partner for this. They started in the state of Minnesota. They're actually in Texas now and sort of all over the place. All those little dots represent the school districts around the Midwest that they have worked with. They have worked with local school districts, so St. Louis Park. They're currently working on a project for Minneapolis Public Schools and Hopkins Public Schools. Their expertise both in the design of a network like this, but also in helping us to ensure that we complete each stage of the project in a way that ensures that we receive full funding from the E-rate program. And I'll mention a little bit about the E-rate program in just a little bit as well. So critical partners to have in this process to help us do the evaluation of our needs. So the evaluation, step one in our evaluation and solution design. This is when True North came out in the summertime and walked around our campus, looked at all of our network closets, reviewed the switches that we have, the environment that we currently run on. They did a Echo scan of our wireless access points to show where we are getting coverage and use that information to help us develop a request for proposal. The request for proposal is the district saying we have a need, and this is the need that we're attempting to address, and this is what we believe will address that need. So they helped us to complete that review and design process, and I would say also that helps us to know where some of the coverage issues were, and so we have been able to place access points to address some of that issue because of that work as well. The request for proposal part is stage 2, and this is a publicly posted request for proposal. It was posted in the local newspaper on the district website and is made available to all vendors across, essentially anyone who wants to submit a proposal. That was posted on December 12th and was available for the duration of time required for the E-rate. And I forget what that date is, and as soon as I read that, I said, oh, I meant to look that up again, but it's about 20 days. It needs to be open so that vendors can submit a proposal for us to review. E-rate is a federal funding program that started in 1996, and it is for schools and public institutions to help ensure access to the internet. It's the libraries and internet program from the 90s. And so we are eligible for E-rate funding to help cover the cost of this project. It's another critical element of this project in order to finish the project in the way that it needs to be done. Included in that process was the evaluation criteria, and I'm going to cover that a little bit more as well in just a moment. And then we did host a day for vendors to come site. So we received 5 proposals, and 3 of the 5 vendors came out to the site and did a walk around our campus. They all wanted to know where they had to drive to get to the other schools. I said, you don't, you just go over there. And then you do have to go down to get to the Discovery Center. So we did not forget about the Discovery Center and went there as well. We received 5 proposals by the January 20th deadline. And so we took those 5 proposals and then we completed an evaluation. I have to remember that this is not connected to that. Okay, I'm in. All right, so here's our evaluation rubric. And so required by law, cost has the highest weighting. And so if you look at this on the left-hand side, we have the criteria, and then adjacent to that is the weights. And so the cost receives 45 points possible, the highest scoring category. And then we have a number of other criteria, again, posted publicly for the vendors to review, similar projects and references, the project team, their years in business, and then their proposed solution and the way that it would fit in with Orono Public Schools. So if you look through across that matrix, each solution was awarded a score. I will note the one in the middle, CISO, only submitted a proposal for the wiring portion of this, and so that's why their scores are so much lower than everybody else's. Based on the criteria evaluation that we did, we believe that CDW provides the best procurement value for the school district, and so that is the vendor that we are requesting to enter into negotiations with. The rationale for the best procurement value for OPS from CDW, why is CDW our choice? They had the lowest cost hardware proposal, receiving a 71% discount for the hardware that will be required to fit into our system. They met all the requirements and received the maximum 30 points for the proposed solution. It means it will fit most neatly in what is already here and will work most quickly because of that fit. Has K-12 education as one of its core verticals. They're well known in the K-12 area. They know what K-12 schools' needs are. They're familiar with that. They have a proven track record of successful projects in Minnesota. They provided a number of references for us to reach out and review. And then they had a favorable lead time for the hardware. So this is going to continue to be something that turns the remaining dark of my hair gray. But the supply chain issues are getting better. And CDW had the most favorable lead time, so 10 days for access points, which is remarkably different than what it was a year ago, but still looking at 120 days for network switches. The good news with the network switches from my perspective is when we completed the upgrade of the phone system, part of what we did when we did that was identify this next need that was coming, and so did get rid of our oldest network switches. And so the good news is we can begin this work before we receive the network switches, and we'll only make the work more robust once we receive them. So the request from the board is to approve the next part of the process. Here's the timeline for steps. Thank you very much. The implementation timeline, our next steps is we seek approval this evening from the board to enter into the contract. Then we begin contract negotiations. Ideally, we're able to wrap that up fairly quickly. Based on their proposal, we don't anticipate a lot of unexpected elements of it. So I might be aggressive on March 6th, but it's our goal to get that part of it taken care of as quickly as possible. The earliest date to begin their initial work would be April 1st. And then the cabling work, actually running the cables through all of the schools, needs to wait until after the kids are gone. The earliest date they can begin that is June 12th. Early August, we'll configure the final system and test the network for performance, host training on the new requirements during workshop week, and then remove the final elements of the previous system and MEA. And we're going to leave the previous system in place for a little while, so we'll run parallel systems for a little bit of time to ensure that we maintain access. Anytime we do something of this size, you can anticipate some hiccups as we begin a full rollout, doing things in the month of July when we don't have all the kids here. We're going to learn a few things early on. We will be prepared, and it'll be great if we don't need it, but it just offers us an extra layer of protection in completing this project. So that is the presentation and how we came to this conclusion, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Any questions for Mr. Beaverson? This is the presentation part that we saw at the finance and facilities, and we kind of, wow, let's do this. Ms.
Thank you.
Lansbury.
I think what I very much appreciated when reviewing this was the rationale of if, for those that may not have gotten the full points per the proposal, why, and an explanation I thought was very helpful in consideration of justification for why CDW received the highest score. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. As I said before, I mean, this is one of the most visible things that we're doing in the short term right now, and incredibly visible on what we had to do to go out to the community to request this. And every single student and faculty member will know how you did on this, right? Like, and I just want to say, I have so much confidence in what you have been doing and what you put together. Yeah, a lot of trust there, and it's well deserved.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know it's a huge challenge, but it's an inevitable one, right? And so I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if I didn't think I had the background and experience to help navigate this. I've woken up in the middle of the night a couple times while considering it, but that's just because I care. So
that will happen a few more times. They may be balder and grayer by the time this is done, but it's a challenge I will fully accept.
You may. Go ahead.
I also will be grayer, just inevitably.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to just remind people who are watching or in the audience that this has been a consistent pain point we've heard from Student Senate. That they want a more robust system. And so, again, to thank the voters who approved the tech levy, because without them, we couldn't meet the needs of the high school students, much less staff and teachers and everyone. So thank you for this analysis, and thank you to the voters.
All right. Can I have a motion then that we approve the contract negotiations for the 2023 Orono Schools wireless LAN upgrade with CDW?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. You've got some work to do now,
That's good.
but good work.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any other new business that we need to address tonight? All right, the next regular board meeting of the school board will be on Monday, March 13th at 7 p.m. in the district office here. And we are now going to adjourn to a work session for the purpose of the administrative mid-year report. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.